The tablet glowed on our kitchen counter like a digital confession booth, and I was about to become its most reluctant priest. It was Tuesday night, the kind of ordinary evening that makes you believe your life is predictable. Alyssa had gone upstairs for her ritual bath, lavender salts, wine glass, locked door. The kids were buried in homework. I grabbed the tablet to check our shared calendar, maybe catch up on the news. That's when I saw it. The dating app was still open, logged into an account I'd never seen before. The profile photo made my stomach lurch. It was Alyssa, but not the Alyssa who complained about grocery bills and argued about whose turn it was to drive Jake to soccer practice. This was a polished version, professionally lit, smiling like she had secrets worth keeping. The bio hit me like a freight train of recognition and betrayal. Love hiking on Sunday mornings, terrible at parallel parking but great at making pancakes. Looking for someone who appreciates sarcastic humor and doesn't mind that I sing off key in the car. I have a weakness for old movies and strong coffee. Currently single and ready to find my person. Every detail was me. My Sunday hikes, my pancakes, the recipe I'd perfected over 15 years of weekend mornings, my sarcastic humor that she claimed to love but lately seemed to tolerate, even the off-key singing, something I'd teased her about since our second date. She'd written a love letter to our marriage and signed it as a single woman. My hands shook as I scrolled through her matches. Dozens of them. Men with gym selfies and boat photos, guys who looked like they'd never worried about mortgage payments or parent-teacher conferences. The messages were flirtatious, confident, nothing like the tired conversations we'd been having lately about scheduling and responsibilities. One name appeared repeatedly, Trent Masters. His messages were different, more familiar, like they'd moved past the getting-to-know-you phase. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Same place? Your husband working late again? Perfect timing? You deserve so much better than what you have at home. I checked the timestamps. Tomorrow night was Wednesday. Alyssa had told me she was having dinner with her sister Miriam, but Miriam lived 3 hours away and rarely visited on weeknights. The bathwater was still running upstairs. I had maybe 10 minutes before Alyssa came back down. I created my own profile. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was catfishing my own wife. I used a photo from my college days, back when I had more hair and fewer worry lines. For the bio, I kept it simple. Recently moved to town. Looking for genuine connection with someone who knows what they want, not interested in games or complications. Within minutes, I had matches. The algorithm was efficient, I'd give it that. And there she was, Alyssa's profile, suggested as a highly compatible match. I swiped right. The match notification appeared instantly. She was online, probably scrolling through profiles while soaking in our bathtub, planning her next deception. I typed carefully, "You seem familiar? Have we met before?" The response came quickly. "I don't think so, but I'd like to change that. What brings you to our little town?" Our little town. The place where we'd bought our first house, where our kids had taken their first steps, where we'd built what I thought was a life together. I heard the bathwater stop running. Time to dig deeper. Work transfer. Still learning my way around. Any recommendations for a good coffee shop? I heard there's one downtown that makes amazing pancakes. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. I'd hit a nerve. You must be thinking of Murphy's Diner. They do have great pancakes. Maybe we could meet there sometime? Murphy's Diner. Where I'd taken her for pancakes every Sunday for the past 3 years. Where the waitress knew our order by heart and always brought extra syrup without being asked. The bathroom door opened upstairs. I quickly closed the app and opened the news, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Alyssa appeared in the kitchen, hair damp, wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked relaxed, almost glowing. I wondered how many of those matches had contributed to that glow. "What are you reading?" she asked, glancing at the tablet. "Just catching up on the news. Nothing interesting." The lie came easily, which surprised me. Maybe I was learning from the master. She poured herself a glass of wine from the bottle we'd opened at dinner. "I'm meeting Miriam tomorrow night, by the way. Sister time. You'll be okay with the kids?" "Of course." I watched her face for any sign of guilt, any crack in the performance. Nothing. She was good at this. "Give her my best." "I will." She kissed the top of my head, the same casual affection she'd shown me for years. It felt different now, like a costume she put on when she needed to play the role of devoted wife. After she went to bed, I returned to the app. "Murphy sounds perfect. When were you thinking?" "How about tomorrow night? Say 7 o'clock? Tomorrow night, when she was supposed to be with Miriam. "It's a date. How will I recognize you?" "I'll be the one trying not to look nervous. See you there." I stared at the screen for a long time after that, processing what I'd just set in motion. In less than 24 hours, I would be sitting across from my wife in a restaurant where we'd shared countless Sunday mornings, pretending to be strangers while she pretended to be single. The tablet felt heavy in my hands, loaded with secrets and lies, and the weight of 15 years of marriage that apparently meant nothing to the woman sleeping upstairs. I had a choice to make. I could confront her now, have the fight, start the messy process of divorce and custody battles, and dividing up the life we'd built together. Or I could show up tomorrow night and see how deep this rabbit hole went. The notification sound chimed softly. Another message from Alyssa. "I should mention, I'm technically still married, but it's complicated. We're basically roommates at this point. I hope that doesn't change anything." Roommates. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, shared dreams and inside jokes, and the comfortable intimacy of people who'd chosen each other every day, reduced to roommates. I typed back, "Life is complicated. I'm not looking for perfect, just honest." The irony was so thick I could taste it. I appreciate that. Honesty is important to me too. I almost laughed out loud. Instead, I closed the app and sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the house settle around me. Upstairs, Alyssa was probably already asleep, dreaming of her new life with men who didn't know she left dishes in the sink or that she cried during insurance commercials. Tomorrow night, I would meet my wife for the first time in years, and she would have no idea who she was really talking to. Wednesday crawled by like a prison sentence. Every interaction with Alyssa felt surreal. Her asking about my day, discussing Jake's upcoming soccer tournament, debating whether Ella needed a tutor for math. Normal married couple conversations while she planned to cheat on me, and I planned to catch her in the act. She left work early, claiming she needed to stop by the store before driving to see Miriam. I watched from the kitchen window as she loaded an overnight bag into her car. For a dinner that would supposedly end by 9 o'clock, she was packing quite a bit. "Drive safely," I called out, playing my part in this theater of lies. "I will. Love you." She blew me a kiss from the driveway. "Love you." The words hung in the air like smoke after she drove away. I fed the kids dinner, helped Ella with her math homework, and listened to Jake complain about his chemistry teacher. Normal dad stuff. Except nothing felt normal anymore. Every mundane moment was colored by the knowledge that my wife was probably getting ready for her date, with me, while pretending to visit her sister. At 6:30, I told the kids I needed to run an errand and would be back in a couple hours. Jake barely looked up from his video game. Ella demanded I bring back ice cream, a request that felt so innocent and normal, it almost broke me. Murphy's Diner sat on the corner of Main and 3rd, a local institution with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that still played actual records. Alyssa and I had claimed the corner booth by the window as ours years ago. Tonight, I chose a table near the back where I could see the entrance but remain partially hidden behind a pillar. I'd changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on a button-down shirt I'd never worn around Alyssa and jeans that actually fit. Strange how I was getting dressed up to meet my own wife. At exactly 7 o'clock, she walked in. She looked stunning. The kind of stunning that comes from effort, professional makeup, hair styled in loose waves, a dress I'd never seen before that probably cost more than our monthly electric bill. She'd transformed herself for this date in a way she hadn't for me in years. She scanned the restaurant, clutching her phone. I watched her check her appearance in the black screen, smooth her dress, take a deep breath like she was preparing for a performance. My phone buzzed with a message. "I'm here. Red dress, by the hostess station. You?" I typed back, "Running a few minutes late. Traffic. Order me a coffee, black." She looked disappointed but nodded to herself and approached the hostess. I watched her request a table, not our usual booth, but one on the opposite side of the restaurant. She was being careful, creating distance from her real life, even in the choice of seating. The waitress who served us every Sunday morning didn't seem to recognize her. The professional styling had worked. She looked like a different person. Or maybe she was a different person, and I'd just been too blind to notice. I waited 15 minutes, watching her check her phone, sip her water, and fidget with her napkin. She ordered coffee for both of us, black for her mystery date, cream, and 2 sugars for herself. After 12 years of Sunday mornings, she knew exactly how I liked my coffee. The irony was suffocating. Finally, I sent another message. "So sorry, work emergency. Rain check for tomorrow night? Same time, same place?" Her face fell. She typed quickly, "Of course these things happen. Tomorrow works better anyway." I waited until she left before settling my bill and walking to my car. She was already gone, probably heading home to maintain her cover story about dinner with Miriam. I wondered what excuse she'd give for being back so early. When I got home, the kids were in their rooms, and the house felt empty despite their presence. I sat in my office and opened the tablet, diving deeper into Alyssa's digital double life. Her message history with Trent Masters painted a picture I wasn't prepared for. Months of conversations, starting casual and growing intimate. References to hotels, to afternoon meetings when she claimed to be working late, to plans for a future that didn't include me. He's getting suspicious, asked why I was working so many late nights. Maybe it's time to tell him. We can't keep this up forever. Soon. I need to figure out the logistics first. The kids, the house, everything. I'll support whatever you decide, but I'm tired of hiding. Just a little longer. I want to do this right. Do this right, like there was a proper etiquette for destroying a marriage. I found photos she'd never sent me. Selfies from hotel rooms, pictures of meals at restaurants I'd never been to, images that documented a whole relationship I knew nothing about. The timestamps showed she'd been living this double life for at least 6 months. The dating app was just the latest evolution. She wasn't just cheating, she was shopping for my replacement. My phone buzzed with a text from Alyssa. "Miriam says hi. Probably won't be too late tonight, she has work in the morning." I responded, "Tell her I said hello. Drive safe." An hour later, she was home, carrying takeout bags from Giuseppe's Italian, our anniversary restaurant, the place we'd gone for every major celebration since our 3rd date. Miriam wasn't feeling well, so we just grabbed takeout and talked at her place, she explained, setting the bags on the counter. "I brought extra in case you were hungry." Giuseppe's was 40 minutes away, in the opposite direction from Miriam's house, but I just nodded and thanked her for thinking of me. She went upstairs to shower and change, probably washing off the perfume and makeup from her failed date. I sat at the kitchen table, picking at chicken parmesan and thinking about the elaborate web of lies she'd constructed. The most disturbing part wasn't the cheating. It was the casual ease with which she'd rewritten our entire relationship. In her messages with Trent, I wasn't her husband of 15 years. I was an obstacle to be managed. Our kids weren't the center of our world. They were logistics to be figured out. Our marriage wasn't something worth fighting for. It was a mistake to be corrected. When she came back downstairs in her pajamas, hair damp and face scrubbed clean, she looked like the woman I'd married. But I knew better now. "How was your evening?" she asked, settling beside me on the couch. "Quiet. Helped Ella with math. Watched Jake lose at his video game for 2 hours. The usual. I paused, then added, "How's Miriam really doing? You seemed worried about her earlier." She didn't miss a beat. "Better now. Work stress mostly. You know how she gets." I did know how Miriam got. I also knew she'd been posting photos from her book club meeting all evening, tagged at the library 20 minutes from her house. But I just nodded sympathetically and let Alyssa spin her story. Later, lying in bed beside her, I listened to her breathing even out as she fell asleep. She looked peaceful, untroubled by guilt or conscience. Maybe she'd compartmentalized so completely that she could genuinely separate her two lives. My phone was on the nightstand, the dating app still installed, our conversation still open. Tomorrow night, I would try again. And this time, I wouldn't stand her up. This time, I would see exactly who my wife had become when she thought no one was watching. Thursday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. I'd spent the day distracted at work, running through scenarios in my head, trying to predict how the confrontation would unfold. By 5 o'clock, I'd convinced myself this was either the stupidest or most necessary thing I'd ever done. Alyssa left the house at 6:15, claiming Miriam was feeling better and wanted to try again. She wore a different dress, navy blue this time, conservative enough for a family dinner, but fitted enough for a date. The performance was flawless. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing my cheek. "We might catch a movie after dinner." I waited 20 minutes before leaving. This time I drove to Murphy's with purpose. No hiding behind pillars or watching from across the room. Tonight, I was going to sit across from my wife and look her in the eye while she lied to my face. She was already there when I arrived, seated at the same table she'd chosen the night before. The hostess led me over with a smile. "You must be her 7 o'clock, she said cheerfully. "She's been waiting patiently." Alyssa looked up as I approached, and for a split second, I saw recognition flicker across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You made it," she said, standing to greet me. I was starting to think I'd been stood up twice. "Wouldn't dream of it." I pulled out my chair and sat down, studying her face. She was good, maintaining eye contact, keeping her expression neutral, but there was tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there at home. "You look familiar," she said, tilting her head slightly. "Are you sure we haven't met?" I was thinking the same thing. Maybe we've crossed paths around town. I signaled the waitress for coffee. "Small world, right?" "Right." She fidgeted with her napkin. "So, you mentioned you're new to the area?" "Work transfer, still getting my bearings." I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. She filled it, as I knew she would. "What kind of work?" Project management. Boring stuff, mostly. What about you?" "Human resources. Also boring, but it pays the bills." She laughed, and it sounded almost genuine. "Do you have family here?" The question hung between us like a loaded weapon. I took a sip of coffee before answering. "Not yet. Still figuring out if this place feels like home." I met her eyes. "What about you? The app said it's complicated." She looked down at her hands. "Married, but we're separated. It's been over for a while, we just haven't made it official yet." "That must be difficult." "It is. 15 years is a long time to realize you've grown apart." She looked up, and there was something almost pleading in her expression. Sometimes people just become different than who they were when they met. Or maybe they become who they always were, and it just takes time to see it clearly. She flinched at that, just slightly. "What do you mean?" "Nothing profound, just that people reveal themselves eventually. You can't pretend forever." The waitress appeared to take our order, providing a welcome interruption. Alyssa ordered a salad, something light, like she was watching her figure for someone new. I ordered the meatloaf special, comfort food for what was shaping up to be an uncomfortable evening. "Tell me about your husband," I said once we were alone again. "That's not really first date conversation." "Humor me. I'm curious what went wrong." She sighed, as if the question pained her. He's not a bad person. We just stopped connecting. He became complacent, took me for granted, started treating me more like a roommate than a wife. How so? Little things. He stopped noticing when I got my hair cut, stopped complimenting me, stopped making an effort. We fell into this routine where we were just going through the motions. I nodded sympathetically. That sounds lonely. It was. Is. She looked out the window. I spent years trying to get his attention, trying to spark something, but he was always distracted. Work, kids, everything else came first. What would you have wanted him to do differently? The question seemed to surprise her. She considered it for a moment. I wanted him to see me. Really see me, not just the role I played in his life. I wanted him to be curious about who I was becoming, not just assume I'd always be the same person he married. And you don't think he saw you? I know he didn't. Her voice was firm. Toward the end, I felt invisible, like I could disappear, and he wouldn't notice until he needed something. The food arrived, giving me time to process her words. There was genuine pain in her voice, real hurt beneath the justifications. But it was pain she'd never shared with me, feelings she'd never expressed until now, to a stranger in a restaurant where we'd shared hundreds of meals. What about you? She asked. Ever been married? No. Came close once, but she wasn't who I thought she was. What do you mean? She was good at being what people wanted to see, adaptable. But I never felt like I knew the real her, like she was always performing. Alyssa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Maybe she was protecting herself. From what? From being judged, from being rejected for who she really was. Or maybe she didn't know who she really was. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The conversation was taking on layers I hadn't expected, becoming more real than the charade I'd planned. Can I ask you something? I said, finally. What made you decide to start dating again? That's a big step. She set down her fork and looked directly at me. I realized I was waiting for permission to be happy, waiting for him to change, waiting for the situation to improve, waiting for the right time. But life doesn't wait, does it? No, it doesn't. I want to feel alive again. I want someone to be excited to see me, to be curious about my thoughts, to make me feel like I matter. You don't feel like you matter now? Not the way I want to, not the way I used to. The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the calculated deception I'd expected. It was raw and vulnerable and completely at odds with the woman who'd been lying to me for months. What happens next? I asked. With your husband, I mean. I don't know. I keep hoping he'll fight for us, show me that I'm worth fighting for. But he won't. He'll just accept whatever I decide and move on with his life. How can you be so sure? Because I know him. He avoids conflict, takes the path of least resistance. If I told him I was unhappy, he'd probably just agree to a divorce to avoid the drama. I stared at her, seeing my wife clearly for the first time in years. She was right about some things. I had become complacent, had stopped making the effort she deserved. But she was wrong about the most important thing. What if he surprised you? I asked quietly. What do you mean? What if he fought back? What if he showed you that you were worth fighting for, just not in the way you expected? Something shifted in her expression. The performance slipped, just for a moment, and I saw fear. I should go, she said suddenly, reaching for her purse. Why? This is moving too fast. I'm not ready for this. She stood up, but I didn't move to stop her. Instead, I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us. Before you go, I have a question about something you wrote in your profile. She froze. You mentioned loving Sunday morning hikes and terrible parallel parking. You said you sing off-key in the car and have a weakness for old movies. I looked up at her. You also mentioned making great pancakes. Where did you learn to make them? The color drained from her face. "From your husband," I continued. "The one who taught you his grandmother's recipe on your third date. The one who's been making them for you every Sunday morning for the past 12 years. She sank back into her chair. "Hello, Alyssa." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Alyssa's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table, her carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time. "Rowan." My name came out as barely a whisper. "Surprise." I kept my voice level, conversational. Though I have to say, this isn't exactly how I pictured spending our evening. She looked around the restaurant as if searching for an escape route. "How long have you known?" "About the dating profile, 2 days. About Trent Masters." "Long enough." I took a sip of coffee, amazed at how calm I felt. "About the fact that my wife of 15 years considers me a roommate she's planning to discard. That's a more recent development." "Rowan, I can explain." "Please do. I'm fascinated to hear how you explain describing our entire relationship to strangers while pretending to be single. Or maybe you'd prefer to start with the hotel receipts I found, or the text messages about how I'm getting suspicious." Her face went pale. "You went through my phone?" "I didn't have to. You left everything open on our shared tablet. Careless, really, for someone running such an elaborate con." "It's not a con." Her voice was stronger now, defensive. "It's not that simple." "Then explain it to me. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been living a double life for months, planning your exit strategy while I made you pancakes every Sunday morning." She looked down at her hands. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." The waitress approached our table, probably sensing the tension. I waved her away with a smile. "We're fine, thanks. Just having a heart-to-heart." Alyssa waited until we were alone again before speaking. "I felt trapped, Rowan. Like I was disappearing into this life we'd built, becoming nothing more than a wife and mother and employee. I couldn't remember the last time someone looked at me and saw me, not just the role I played in their life." "So you decided to find someone who would?" "I decided to remember who I was, before I became half of us. By lying about being single? By exploring what it would feel like to be single, to have conversations that weren't about schedules and responsibilities and what needed to be fixed around the house." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "And Trent? Where does he fit into your journey of self-discovery?" She flinched. "That just happened. I wasn't looking for it." "But you didn't stop it." "No, I didn't stop it." She met my eyes for the first time since I'd revealed myself. Because for the first time in years, I felt alive again. Someone was excited to see me, curious about my thoughts, interested in who I was becoming. "I was interested in who you were becoming. You just never let me see her." "Because you stopped looking years ago." The accusation hit harder than I'd expected. There was truth in it, painful truth that I'd been avoiding. "You're right," I said quietly. "I did stop looking. I got comfortable, assumed you'd always be there, took for granted that we were solid. But that doesn't excuse what you've done." "I'm not asking for excuses. I'm trying to help you understand." "Understand what?" "That instead of talking to me about feeling invisible, you decided to become invisible to me. That instead of fighting for our marriage, you went shopping for a replacement." "I tried talking to you. Remember our anniversary dinner 2 years ago? I told you I felt like we were drifting apart, that I needed more from our relationship. You said you'd try harder, then nothing changed." I did remember that dinner. I'd been distracted by a work crisis, had only half listened to what she was saying. I'd made promises I didn't keep, reassurances that rang hollow even as I spoke them. "So you gave up on us." "I gave up on you changing. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you decided I was hopeless and started auditioning my replacement." She was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe I did." The honesty was brutal and somehow refreshing. No more lies, no more performances. "What happens now?" I asked. I don't know. Do you love him? I don't know that either. Do you love me? She looked out the window, watching cars pass in the darkness. I love who you used to be. I love the memories we made. But I don't know if I love who we've become together. And you think starting over with someone new will fix that? I think maybe we're not fixable, Rowan. Maybe we've grown into people who don't work together anymore. I signaled the waitress for the check. The conversation had run its course, and sitting in our old restaurant felt like attending a funeral for something that was already gone. For what it's worth, I said as we waited for the bill, you were wrong about one thing. What's that? You said I'd just accept whatever you decided and move on, that I wouldn't fight for us. She looked at me with something that might have been hope. Are you going to fight for us? I stood up and dropped cash on the table. I'm going to fight, Alyssa, but not for us. That ship has sailed. I'm going to fight for me and for our kids and for the truth about what really happened to our marriage. What does that mean? It means you're about to discover that I'm not as complacent as you thought. It means your carefully planned exit strategy just got a lot more complicated. I walked toward the door, then turned back. She was still sitting at the table, looking lost and smaller than I'd ever seen her. Oh, and Alyssa, next time you want to reinvent yourself, you might want to come up with original material. That bio you wrote? It wasn't describing the woman you want to become. It was describing the woman you used to be when you were with me, before you decided I wasn't worth the effort. I left her sitting there and walked out into the night, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Clarity. The marriage was over. Had been over longer than I'd wanted to admit. But I was done being the villain in her story, the complacent husband who drove her into another man's arms. If she wanted a war, she'd have one. But she was about to learn that underestimating your opponent is the first mistake in any battle. And I was done making mistakes. I didn't go home immediately. Instead, I drove to the 24-hour diner across town and ordered coffee I didn't want, needing time to process what had just happened and plan what came next. The confrontation had been both more and less satisfying than I'd imagined. More because I'd finally seen the real Alyssa, stripped of pretense and forced to be honest. Less because that honesty had confirmed my worst fears. She hadn't just cheated. She'd emotionally checked out of our marriage months ago. But knowledge was power, and I had plenty of both now. I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything. Screenshots of her dating profile, her conversations with Trent, the timeline of her deception. If this was heading toward divorce court, I wanted to be prepared. The dating app was still active on her account. I could see her location. She was driving home, probably crafting her story about another evening with Miriam. I wondered what excuse she'd give for coming home early again. By the time I got home, her car was in the driveway and the lights were off downstairs. I found her in our bedroom, already changed into pajamas, sitting on the edge of the bed staring at her phone. "How was Miriam?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were red-rimmed, whether from crying or stress I couldn't tell. "Fine. Good. We had a nice time." The lie came automatically but without conviction. "That's good. I'm glad she's feeling better." I went through my normal bedtime routine, brushing teeth, changing clothes, setting my alarm, while she watched me with the wariness of someone waiting for the other shoe to drop. When I climbed into bed beside her, she was rigid with tension. "Rowan?" "Yeah? Are we okay?" I turned off the bedside lamp before answering. "Define okay." She didn't respond, and eventually her breathing evened out into sleep. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and thinking about 15 years of marriage that had apparently been a performance for at least the last 6 months. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run, something I hadn't done in months. When I got back, Alyssa was making coffee and getting ready for work. She moved around the kitchen with careful normalcy, but I could feel her watching me. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." Thought I'd start the day with some exercise. That's good. You've been talking about getting back into running. Had I? I couldn't remember. Maybe that was part of the problem. We'd stopped really listening to each other years ago. She left for work without the usual goodbye kiss, just a wave from the doorway. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner before opening my laptop. Time for some investigation. I started with Trent Masters. Social media made stalking remarkably easy. Within an hour, I had his employment history, his divorce records, his address, and a pretty clear picture of his character. Recently divorced, worked in sales for a medical equipment company, drove a red Mustang he was probably still making payments on. His Facebook page was full of gym selfies and motivational quotes about success and determination. He looked like every midlife crisis cliché rolled into one. I found photos of him with Alyssa at restaurants I didn't recognize, posted to his Instagram with captions about amazing company and new adventures. The timestamps confirmed they'd been seeing each other for at least 3 months. My phone buzzed with a text from Alyssa. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I almost laughed. After last night's confrontation, she was still maintaining the charade. I texted back, "No problem. I'll probably be out late too. Dave wants to grab drinks." Dave was my college roommate who lived 2 states away, but Alyssa wouldn't know that. Instead of going out, I spent the evening diving deeper into Alyssa's digital footprint. Her email accounts, her social media, her browsing history, all accessible through our shared devices and accounts she'd forgotten I had access to. What I found painted a picture of a woman who'd been planning her escape for longer than I'd realized. She'd been researching divorce lawyers, looking at apartment listings, even exploring job opportunities in other cities. The dating profile wasn't a moment of weakness, it was part of a comprehensive exit strategy. I also found the group chat. Alyssa, her sister Miriam, her best friend Natalie, and 2 other women I barely knew had been discussing my marriage like it was a reality show they were all invested in. The messages went back months, chronicling Alyssa's growing dissatisfaction and their collective advice on how to handle it. Natalie, you deserve better than someone who takes you for granted. Miriam, I never liked him anyway. Too passive. Alyssa, I feel guilty about Trent, but I can't keep living like this. Friend number 1, the guilt will pass. You have to think about your happiness. Friend number 2, kids are resilient. They'll adjust. Alyssa, I just wish there was a way to make Rowan understand without destroying everything. Natalie, some things have to be destroyed before they can be rebuilt. They'd been planning my life like I wasn't a real person with feelings and agency. I was just an obstacle to Alyssa's happiness, a problem to be solved. The most recent messages were from earlier that evening, after our confrontation at Murphy's. Alyssa, he knows about everything. Miriam, how? Alyssa, he found my dating profile, set up a fake account, and matched with me. Natalie, that's actually kind of brilliant. Alyssa, it's creepy and manipulative. Miriam, says the woman who's been lying to him for months. Alyssa, that's different. Natalie, how is it different? Alyssa, because I was protecting him from getting hurt. Friend number 1, by cheating on him? Alyssa, by not involving him in my process until I figured things out. Miriam, what did he say when you told him? Alyssa, he said he was going to fight, but not for our marriage, for himself and the kids. Natalie, what does that mean? Alyssa, I don't know, but I don't think this is going to be as clean as I hoped. Friend number 2, maybe you should talk to that lawyer sooner rather than later. Alyssa, maybe I should. I screenshot the entire conversation and saved it to a secure folder. If Alyssa wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I had all the pieces. My phone rang. Dave's name appeared on the screen. The real Dave, not the fictional one I'd used as an alibi. Hey, stranger, he said when I answered. Haven't heard from you in months. How's married life? I almost laughed at the timing. Actually, Dave, I could use some advice. Got time for a long story? Always. What's going on? I told him everything. The dating profile, the confrontation, the months of deception I'd uncovered. He listened without interruption, occasionally making sympathetic noises. Jesus, Rowan. I'm sorry. That's brutal. Yeah, it is. What are you going to do? I'm still figuring that out. But I'm done being the passive husband who just accepts whatever happens to him. Good. You deserve better than that. The weird thing is, I think she's right about some of it. I did get complacent. I did stop making an effort. But instead of talking to me about it, she just gave up on us. That's on her, not you. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership. You work through problems together. You don't just start shopping for a replacement. Tell that to her support group. Apparently, I'm the villain in this story. Screw her support group. What matters is what you do next. I'm thinking about hiring a private investigator, document everything, make sure I have all the facts before this gets ugly. That's smart. Protect yourself and the kids. After we hung up, I sat in my office staring at the evidence I'd gathered. Photos, messages, browsing histories, financial records, a complete picture of a marriage that had been unraveling while I wasn't paying attention. But I was paying attention now. I opened a new browser window and started researching private investigators in our area. If Alyssa thought she could control the narrative of our divorce, she was about to learn otherwise. The passive husband she'd married was gone. What she was left with was someone who'd finally decided to fight back. And I was just getting started. The private investigator's office looked exactly like something out of a noir film. Frosted glass door, cramped waiting room with outdated magazines, and the lingering smell of coffee and cigarettes. Marcus Webb had come highly recommended by Dave's divorce attorney, with 20 years of experience and a reputation for thorough, discreet work. Mr. Carrick? A man in his 50s emerged from the inner office, extending a weathered hand. Marcus Webb, come on back. His office was organized chaos, filing cabinets, computer equipment, and walls covered with certificates and photos from what looked like a long career in law enforcement. So, he said, settling behind his desk, your wife is cheating, and you want documentation for divorce proceedings. It's more complicated than that. I handed him a folder with printouts of everything I'd discovered. She's been planning this for months, maybe longer. I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make my next move. He flipped through the documents, occasionally raising an eyebrow. This is pretty thorough work for an amateur. You in law enforcement? IT project management. I'm good with digital forensics. Clearly. He closed the folder. What exactly are you looking for from me? Professional documentation of her activities, photos, witness statements, anything that would hold up in court. I also want to know more about this Trent Masters character. Financial situation, employment history, whether he's done this before. Background check on the boyfriend, surveillance of your wife, documentation of the affair, standard package. He quoted a price that made me wince. How long do you want me to follow her? However long it takes to get what we need. Fair enough. I'll need a retainer and signed contracts. When do you want me to start? Yesterday. He smiled. I like a client who knows what he wants. Give me a week to put together a preliminary report. That evening, I was loading the dishwasher when Alyssa came home from work. She'd been distant since our confrontation at Murphy's, polite but careful, like she was walking through a minefield. How was your day? She asked, the question automatic. Good, productive. Yours? Fine, busy. She poured herself a glass of wine, her second since coming home, I noticed. Rowan, we need to talk. About what? About what happens next. We can't just pretend the other night didn't happen. I dried my hands and turned to face her. What do you want to talk about? I think we should consider couples counseling. The suggestion caught me off guard. Counseling? to help us figure out if this marriage is salvageable, if there's anything left worth fighting for. Interesting timing. Last week you were describing me as a roommate to your online dates. Now you want to work on things? She flinched. I was confused, angry. I said things I didn't mean. Which things didn't you mean? The part about feeling invisible or the part about shopping for my replacement? Both. Neither. I don't know. She sat down heavily at the kitchen table. I'm scared, Rowan. I'm scared we've broken something that can't be fixed, but I'm also scared of throwing away 15 years without trying. What about Trent? What about him? Are you still seeing him? She was quiet for a long moment. No. I ended it. When? Yesterday, after our dinner. Why? Because regardless of what happens between us, I realized I was using him to avoid dealing with our problems. That's not fair to anyone. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. She seemed genuine. But then again, she'd seemed genuine for months while living a double life. What would counseling accomplish that we can't accomplish by talking to each other? Maybe nothing, but maybe a neutral third party could help us figure out what went wrong and whether it's fixable. And if it's not fixable, then at least we'd know we tried everything before we make permanent decisions. I considered her proposal. Counseling might actually be useful, not for saving our marriage, which I was increasingly convinced was beyond salvation, but for establishing a record of attempting reconciliation. It would look good in divorce proceedings. Okay, I said finally. We can try counseling. Relief flooded her face. Really? Really. But I have conditions. What kind of conditions? Complete honesty. No more lies. No more hidden conversations, no more secret accounts or profiles. If we're going to do this, we do it with everything on the table. Of course, absolutely. And you give me access to everything: phone, email, social media, bank accounts. Full transparency. She hesitated. That seems extreme. You've been lying to me for months, Alyssa. Trust has to be rebuilt, and transparency is how that happens. Fine, if that's what it takes. Good. I'll find a counselor and set up an appointment. That night she made an effort to be affectionate, sitting closer to me on the couch, initiating conversation about the kids, even suggesting we watch a movie together. It felt performative, like she was trying to prove something to herself as much as to me. The next morning, I called 3 marriage counselors before finding one with an opening the following week. Dr. Sarah Martinez had excellent reviews and specialized in couples dealing with infidelity. I also called Marcus Webb. Any updates? I asked. Preliminary stuff. Your wife did meet with someone yesterday. Male, mid-40s, red Mustang. They talked in his car for about 20 minutes in the parking lot of a coffee shop downtown. Looked intense. Ending it, probably. Maybe. But here's the interesting part. After she left, he made a phone call that got pretty animated. Lots of gesturing. Clearly upset about something. Could you hear what he was saying? Not from where I was positioned, but I got photos of the whole thing. Want me to keep following her? Yes. And see what you can find out about that phone call. Will do. I hung up, feeling vindicated. Even when Alyssa was supposedly coming clean and trying to work on our marriage, she was still keeping secrets. The meeting with Trent could have been innocent, ending their relationship, as she claimed, but the fact that she hadn't mentioned it told me everything I needed to know. She was still managing the narrative, still controlling the information I received. The counseling proposal wasn't about saving our marriage. It was about buying time to execute whatever plan she and her support group had cooked up. But I was done being managed. When she got home that evening, I was waiting with a bottle of wine and takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. "What's this?" she asked, looking suspicious. "A peace offering. I thought we could have a nice dinner and talk about counseling. I found someone who can see us next week." She relaxed slightly. "That's wonderful. Thank you for making the effort." We ate and talked about neutral topics, the kids' schedules, weekend plans, a movie she wanted to see. It felt almost normal, like the old days before everything got complicated. After dinner, I poured more wine and brought up the elephant in the room. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about being confused and scared. Yeah? I want you to know that I understand. I haven't been the husband you needed, and I take responsibility for my part in what went wrong. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you for saying that. But I also need you to understand that trust is going to take time to rebuild. There might be moments when I seem suspicious or ask questions that feel intrusive. I understand. Good. Like right now, where did you go after work yesterday? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? You got home later than usual. I was just curious where you'd been. I stopped at the grocery store and got gas. Which grocery store? The one on 5th Street. Why? Just trying to understand your routine better. Part of rebuilding trust, right? She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning. She was wondering how much I knew, how much I was testing her. Did you run into anyone you knew? No, I don't think so. That's good. I'd hate for there to be any awkward encounters while we're working on things. I kept my tone light, conversational, but the message was clear. I was watching, I was paying attention, and I wasn't as naive as she thought. Later that night, as we got ready for bed, she made another effort at intimacy, touching my arm, standing closer than necessary, making eye contact in the bathroom mirror. I'm glad we're doing this, she said. Working on us, I mean. Me too. I know it won't be easy, but I think we can get through this. I hope so. She kissed me goodnight, soft and tentative, like she was testing the waters. I kissed her back, playing my part in whatever game we were both pretending wasn't happening. But as I lay in the dark listening to her breathing, I thought about Marcus Webb's photos of her meeting with Trent, about the animated phone call afterward, about the lies that came so easily, even when she was supposedly committed to honesty. The counseling would be interesting, not because it would save our marriage, but because it would give me a front-row seat to watch her perform for a professional audience. And maybe, if I was lucky, it would give me exactly what I needed to end this charade once and for all. Dr. Sarah Martinez's office was designed to be soothing, soft lighting, comfortable chairs, tissues strategically placed, and the kind of neutral decor that was supposed to make people feel safe enough to bare their souls. Alyssa and I sat on opposite ends of a couch that had probably absorbed years of marital confessions. So, Dr. Martinez said, settling into her chair with a legal pad, what brings you both here today? Alyssa and I looked at each other. We'd discussed this in the car, who would start, how much to reveal in the first session. She'd volunteered to take the lead. We've been married for 15 years, Alyssa began, and we've grown apart. We're here because we want to see if we can find our way back to each other. That's a good start. What does grown apart mean to you? We stopped communicating, stopped making an effort, became more like roommates than partners. I noticed she was using the same language she'd used with her online dates. Even in therapy, she was performing. Rowan, how would you describe the situation? I think we stopped seeing each other as individuals and started taking each other for granted. But recently, some things have come to light that make me question whether we were ever as connected as I thought we were. Dr. Martinez made a note. What kind of things? I looked at Alyssa. We'd agreed to be honest, but I wondered how honest she was prepared to be. I discovered that Alyssa has been exploring other relationships. I see. Alyssa, would you like to respond to that? Alyssa's cheeks flushed. It's not that simple. Yes, I met someone, but it wasn't about replacing Rowan. It was about remembering who I was as an individual. Tell me more about that. I felt invisible in our marriage, like I existed only as a wife and mother, not as a person with my own needs and desires. Meeting someone new reminded me that I was still capable of being interesting to someone. And how did this make you feel, Rowan? Betrayed. Not just because of the affair, but because instead of talking to me about feeling invisible, she chose to find validation elsewhere. Did you try to talk to Rowan about these feelings before seeking connection elsewhere? Dr. Martinez asked Alyssa. I tried, but he didn't really hear me, or if he heard me, nothing changed. Can you give me an example? Alyssa described our anniversary dinner from 2 years ago, the conversation I'd barely paid attention to because of work stress. She was right. I had dismissed her concerns, made promises I didn't keep. How do you remember that conversation, Rowan? Honestly, I remember being distracted by work problems. I heard what she was saying, but I didn't really listen. I thought she was just going through a rough patch that would resolve itself. So you both acknowledged that there were communication issues before the affair? We both nodded. Alyssa, help me understand the timeline. When did you start feeling invisible, and when did you begin seeking connection elsewhere? The feelings started years ago, but they got worse about a year ago. The other relationship began about 6 months ago. She was lying. I had evidence that it started at least 8 months ago, but I didn't correct her, not yet. And what prompted you to act on those feelings at that particular time? I realized I was waiting for Rowan to change, waiting for him to notice I was unhappy, waiting for our relationship to improve. But nothing was changing, and I felt like I was disappearing. Rowan, were you aware that Alyssa was unhappy? I knew we'd fallen into a routine, but I thought that was normal for a long marriage. I didn't realize the extent of her dissatisfaction. What would you have done differently if you'd known? I would have fought for us, made more of an effort, asked better questions. And now? What do you want from this process? I looked at Alyssa, who was watching me intently. I want to understand what went wrong. I want to know if we can rebuild trust. And I want to make sure that whatever happens next is best for our children. Alyssa, what do you want? I want to know if we can find our way back to each other. If the love we had is still there underneath all the hurt and disappointment. Have you ended the outside relationship? Yes, immediately after Rowan and I talked about it. Another lie. According to Marcus Webb, she'd met with Trent just yesterday. How are you both feeling about that decision? Relieved, Alyssa said quickly. It was a mistake, and I'm glad it's over. Rowan? I'm glad she ended it, but I'm struggling with trust. It's hard to believe that someone who could deceive me for months has suddenly become completely honest. Dr. Martinez made more notes. Trust is often the biggest challenge in recovering from infidelity. Alyssa, what are you willing to do to rebuild that trust? Whatever it takes. Complete transparency, answering any questions he has, giving him access to my accounts and devices. And Rowan, what would help you feel more secure? Time, consistency, seeing that her actions match her words over an extended period. That's reasonable. I'd like to suggest some exercises for you both to work on between now and our next session. She handed us each a worksheet. These are designed to help you reconnect as individuals and as a couple. Alyssa, I want you to write about who you are outside of your roles as wife and mother. Rowan, I want you to write about what you appreciate about Alyssa as a person, not just as a partner. We scheduled our next appointment for the following week and walked to our cars in silence. How do you think that went? Alyssa asked finally. It was a start. She seems good, insightful. Yeah. Are you okay? You seem distant. I stopped walking and turned to face her. I'm processing. This is all new territory for me. For me too. Is it? Because you seemed pretty comfortable talking about your feelings and motivations. Like you'd thought about this a lot. I have thought about it. I've been trying to understand what went wrong for months. While you were having an affair. She flinched. Yes. I know how that sounds, but it's the truth. The truth, that's an interesting concept coming from someone who's been lying to me for the better part of a year. Rowan, I'm trying, Alyssa. I really am. but every time you speak, I find myself wondering what you're not telling me. I'm not hiding anything anymore. Good. Then you won't mind if I ask where you were yesterday after work? The question hung between us like a trap. She knew I knew something, but she didn't know how much. I told you. The grocery store and gas station. Anywhere else? No. You sure? Yes, I'm sure. Why are you interrogating me? I'm not interrogating you. I'm trying to rebuild trust, like Dr. Martinez suggested. But that requires honesty from both of us. I am being honest. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of Marcus Webb's photos, her sitting in Trent's car in the coffee shop parking lot. The color drained from her face. Where did you get this? Does it matter? What matters is that you lied to me. Again. After promising complete honesty not 24 hours ago. It's not what it looks like. What does it look like, Alyssa? Like I was meeting with Trent. And were you? Yes, but only to make sure he understood that it was really over. He was having trouble accepting it. And you couldn't mention this to me because I knew you'd react exactly like this. I knew you'd assume the worst. The worst? You mean like assuming my wife was lying to me? Given recent history, that seems like a pretty reasonable assumption. She started to cry, right there in the parking lot of the therapist's office. I can't do anything right. I ended the affair like you wanted, but that's not enough. I agreed to counseling, but that's not enough. I promised transparency, but you don't trust me anyway. Because you keep lying. I didn't lie. I just didn't mention something that I knew would upset you unnecessarily. That's called lying by omission. And the fact that you think you get to decide what information I can handle tells me everything I need to know about how you see this marriage. I got in my car and drove home, leaving her standing in the parking lot. My phone buzzed with texts as I drove, apologies, explanations, promises to do better. I ignored them all. At home, I called Marcus Webb. How'd the therapy session go? He asked. About as expected. She's still lying, still trying to control the narrative. What did you find out about that phone call Trent made after their meeting? Interesting development there. I managed to get closer to his car today, got some audio. He was talking to a lawyer about divorce proceedings and asset protection. Divorce proceedings? He's already divorced. Not his divorce, yours. Apparently your wife has been discussing her exit strategy with him in some detail. The pieces clicked into place. Alyssa wasn't trying to save our marriage. She was buying time to execute her plan. The counseling, the promises, the tears. All of it was performance designed to make her look like the reasonable party who tried everything before filing for divorce. I need everything you can get me, I told Marcus. Photos, audio, documentation, whatever it takes. You got it. But Rowan, you might want to consider getting your own lawyer, soon. After he hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the homework assignment from Dr. Martinez. Write about what I appreciated about Alyssa as a person. I could have written about her intelligence, her dedication to our children, her ability to make friends easily. All of those things were true. But what struck me most as I thought about it was her talent for performance. She could become whoever she needed to be in any given moment. Devoted wife, dissatisfied woman seeking connection, repentant cheater committed to reconciliation. The question was, who was she really when no one was watching? And did it matter anymore? 3 days after our first counseling session, Marcus Webb called with news that changed everything. I've got something you need to see, he said. Can you meet me at my office? An hour later, I was sitting across from him as he spread photos and documents across his desk like pieces of a puzzle. Your wife met with Trent again yesterday, he began, pointing to a series of surveillance photos. Same coffee shop, but this time they went inside. I managed to get a table close enough to record parts of their conversation. He handed me a small digital recorder and pressed play. Alyssa's voice came through clearly. The counseling is working perfectly. He thinks I'm really trying to save the marriage. Trent's response was muffled, but audible. How much longer do you need? A few more sessions. I want to establish that I made every effort before filing. It'll look better in court. What about the financial stuff? I've been documenting everything. His salary, the accounts, the house value. My lawyer says I should be entitled to at least half of everything plus spousal support. And the kids? Joint custody, but I'll push for primary. He works long hours, travels for business. I'm the more stable parent. My hands were shaking as Marcus turned off the recorder. There's more, he said gently. I followed up on Trent's background check. He's done this before, had an affair with a married woman about 3 years ago. She left her husband, but Trent broke it off once she was available. Seems he prefers the excitement of forbidden relationships to actual commitment. So Alyssa is setting herself up for disappointment, even if she gets what she thinks she wants. Looks that way. But here's the thing that really caught my attention. He's been recording their conversations too. I looked up sharply. What? Phone conversations, at least. I saw him using some kind of recording app during one of their calls. Could be insurance in case things go south, or maybe he's just paranoid. Either way, your wife might not be as in control of this situation as she thinks. I leaned back in my chair, processing the implications. What else do you have? Marcus opened a thick folder. Financial records showing she's been moving money into a separate account for the past 4 months. Screenshots of her researching divorce lawyers and apartment rentals. And this. He handed me a printed email thread between Alyssa and a lawyer named Patricia Chen. The emails laid out a comprehensive divorce strategy. File for irreconcilable differences while maintaining that she tried everything to save the marriage, seek primary custody based on my work schedule and travel, claim half of all assets including my retirement accounts, and request spousal support based on the lifestyle she'd become accustomed to. The most damning part was her description of me. My husband is passive and conflict avoidant. He's unlikely to fight the divorce or custody arrangement if I approach it reasonably. He'll probably just want it over with as quickly as possible. She's been planning this for months, I said, at least, and she's been very thorough about it. I thought about our counseling session, her tears in the parking lot, her promises of transparency and commitment to rebuilding our marriage. All of it had been theater. What do you recommend? Get your own lawyer, today. File first if possible. It gives you some strategic advantages, and document everything. Her deception, the affair, the financial manipulation. The more evidence you have, the better your position. I left Marcus's office with copies of everything and a recommendation for a divorce attorney who specialized in contentious cases. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, I was sitting in the office of Jennifer Walsh, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a reputation for aggressive advocacy. This is quite a collection, she said after reviewing Marcus's evidence. Your wife has been planning this very carefully. What are my options? Several. We can file for divorce immediately based on adultery, which puts her on the defensive. We can seek primary custody based on her deception and poor judgment. And we can challenge her financial claims based on the evidence of her premeditation. What about the counseling? Will that hurt our case? Actually, it helps. You can demonstrate that you were willing to work on the marriage while she was using therapy as a cover for her exit strategy. That shows good faith on your part and deception on hers. How long will this take? Depends on how hard she fights. If she realizes her plan has been exposed, she might be willing to negotiate reasonably. If not, we could be looking at months of litigation. I signed the retainer agreement and authorized her to begin preparing divorce papers. Walking out of her office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: control. That evening, Alyssa came home with flowers and a bottle of wine. I thought we could have a nice dinner and talk about the homework assignment from Dr. Martinez, she said, arranging the flowers in a vase. That sounds good. She'd made my favorite meal, grilled salmon with asparagus, the same dinner she'd cooked for our first anniversary. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I've been thinking about what you said in the parking lot, she began as we ate. About trust and honesty. Yeah? I realize I haven't been completely forthcoming about everything. I want to change that. Here it comes, I thought. The limited hangout, revealing just enough truth to maintain credibility while hiding the bigger deception. I did meet with Trent again after our session, but it really was just to make sure he understood that we were finished. He was having trouble accepting it, sending texts and calls that were making me uncomfortable. What kind of texts? Asking me to reconsider, saying he thought I was making a mistake, that kind of thing. And you felt you needed to meet with him in person to end it? I thought it would be clearer that way, more final. I nodded sympathetically. That makes sense. What did you tell him? That I was committed to working on our marriage, that what we had was a mistake, and that he needed to respect my decision and leave me alone. How did he take it? Not well initially, but I think he understood by the end of the conversation. Good. I'm glad you were direct with him. She looked relieved. I should have told you about it immediately. I was just worried about how you'd react. I appreciate you telling me now. That's the kind of honesty we need if we're going to rebuild trust. We finished dinner and moved to the living room with our wine. Alyssa curled up next to me on the couch, closer than she'd sat in months. I wrote something for the homework assignment, she said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. Would you like to hear it? Sure. She read aloud about rediscovering herself as an individual, about dreams she'd put aside to focus on family, about wanting to feel passionate about life again. It was beautifully written and completely manipulative, designed to make me feel guilty for not nurturing her personal growth while painting her affair as a journey of self-discovery rather than a betrayal. That's really insightful, I said when she finished. It helps me understand your perspective. What did you write? I pulled out my own paper, a list of things I genuinely appreciated about her. Her intelligence, her dedication to our children, her ability to make people feel welcome in our home. I'd written it before learning about her latest deception, and it felt strange reading it now. Thank you, she said when I finished. It means a lot to hear that you still see good things in me. Of course I do. Our problems don't erase 15 years of marriage. She leaned against me and I could smell her perfume, the same scent she'd worn on our wedding day. Do you think we can make this work, Rowan? Really? I looked down at her, this woman I'd loved for so long, who was playing a role so convincingly that I almost believed it myself. I think we owe it to ourselves and our kids to try everything we can. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. The words came automatically, and I realized they were still true in some fundamental way. I loved the woman she'd been, the mother she was to our children, the memories we'd created together. But I no longer loved who she'd become, or maybe who she'd always been beneath the performance. Later that night, as she slept beside me, I thought about Jennifer Walsh's advice to document everything. I quietly took photos of Alyssa's purse, noting the receipts and business cards visible in the side pocket. I screenshot her recent text messages and call logs. I documented the flowers she'd brought home and the wine we'd shared, evidence of her continuing manipulation. Tomorrow, I would play my part in our second counseling session. I would be the husband trying to save his marriage, while she played the repentant wife committed to change. But now I knew the truth about both of our performances. And I was finally ready to end the show. Our second counseling session was scheduled for Thursday at 2 o'clock. I arrived early and sat in the waiting room reviewing the script I'd mentally prepared. Today would be different from our first session. Today, I had a role to play. Alyssa arrived 5 minutes late, apologizing breathlessly about traffic. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse and avoiding eye contact. "How has the week been for you both?" Dr. Martinez asked once we were settled. "Better," Alyssa said quickly. "We've been communicating more openly. I think the homework assignment really helped." "That's good to hear. Rowan, how would you characterize the week?" "Enlightening. I feel like I'm starting to understand Alyssa's perspective better. Can you elaborate on that? I realize now that I've been thinking about our problems in terms of what I lost: trust, security, the marriage I thought we had. But I haven't been considering what Alyssa lost along the way: her sense of self, her individual identity, her feeling of being valued as a person rather than just a role. Alyssa looked surprised and pleased. Dr. Martinez made a note. That's a significant shift in perspective. What brought about that change? Listening. Really listening to what she's been telling me, instead of just reacting to the betrayal. How does it feel to hear that, Alyssa? Hopeful. Like, maybe we can find our way back to each other after all. Let's talk about the homework assignments. Alyssa, you were supposed to write about who you are outside your roles as wife and mother. What did you discover? Alyssa repeated the performance from our dinner conversation, the journey of self-discovery, the dreams put aside, the need to feel passionate about life. Dr. Martinez listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Rowan, you were asked to write about what you appreciate about Alyssa as a person. What stood out to you? I pulled out my paper, but instead of reading what I'd written, I spoke from memory. What I appreciate most about Alyssa is her intelligence and her strategic thinking. She's incredibly good at understanding complex situations and developing comprehensive plans to achieve her goals. Alyssa's smile faltered slightly. She's also remarkably skilled at reading people and adapting her approach based on what they need to hear. It's a talent that's served her well professionally and personally. Those are interesting qualities to highlight, Dr. Martinez said. Can you give me an example? Well, take our current situation. Alyssa recognized that our marriage was in trouble and developed a thoughtful approach to addressing it. She researched her options, consulted with trusted advisors, and created a timeline for implementation that took everyone's needs into account. Alyssa was staring at me now, uncertainty creeping into her expression. She even had the foresight to document everything carefully, ensuring that whatever decisions we make will be based on clear evidence rather than emotion. That does sound very thoughtful, Dr. Martinez agreed. Alyssa, how does it feel to hear Rowan describe your approach that way? I'm not sure what he means about documentation and timelines. Oh, just your research into counselors, your conversations with friends and family about our situation, your careful consideration of all the factors involved. It's clear you've put a lot of thought into finding the best path forward for both of us. The room fell silent. Alyssa was looking at me like she'd never seen me before. Rowan, Dr. Martinez said carefully, you seem to be describing Alyssa's approach to your marital problems in very clinical terms. How are you feeling emotionally about the situation? Honestly, I'm impressed. It takes real courage to make difficult decisions, especially when they affect other people. I respect Alyssa for being willing to take action rather than just hoping things would improve on their own. What kind of action are you referring to? I looked directly at Alyssa. The kind of action that prioritizes long-term happiness over short-term comfort. The kind that requires careful planning and strategic thinking. Alyssa's face had gone pale. Rowan, what are you talking about? I'm talking about admiring your commitment to getting what you want, even when it's complicated. Not everyone would have the patience to work through all the logistics involved. What logistics? I smiled at her, the same warm smile I'd given her every morning for 15 years. The financial planning, the legal research, the timeline for implementation, the way you've managed multiple relationships while keeping everyone's best interests in mind. It's really quite remarkable. Dr. Martinez was looking between us with growing concern. I'm sensing some tension here that wasn't present in our last session. Not tension, I said. Clarity. I finally understand what Alyssa has been trying to tell me about taking control of your own happiness instead of waiting for someone else to change. And what do you plan to do with that understanding? I plan to follow her example. I pulled out a manila envelope and set it on the coffee table between us. "What's that?" Alyssa asked, though something in her voice suggested she already knew. "Divorce papers, filed this morning." The silence that followed was deafening. Alyssa stared at the envelope like it was a venomous snake. "I don't understand," Dr. Martinez said. "Last week you both expressed commitment to working on your marriage." "I was committed," I replied. But it turns out Alyssa was working on something else entirely. I opened the envelope and pulled out copies of Marcus Webb's evidence, the photos, the recorded conversations, the financial records, the emails with her lawyer. It seems my wife has been planning our divorce for months while using counseling as a cover story to make herself look like the reasonable party who tried everything. Alyssa's hands were shaking as she looked at the photos. "Where did you get these?" "From the private investigator I hired after discovering your dating profile. The same investigator who recorded your conversation with Trent about how well the counseling was working as part of your exit strategy." Dr. Martinez was staring at the document spread across her coffee table. "Alyssa, is this accurate?" "It's not what it looks like." "It looks like fraud," I said calmly. "Marriage counseling under false pretenses, financial manipulation, and conspiracy to commit perjury in divorce proceedings." "I wasn't going to commit perjury." "No? So when you filed papers claiming irreconcilable differences and stating that counseling had failed despite your best efforts, that would have been truthful?" She didn't answer. "I think we should end today's session," Dr. Martinez said. "This is clearly not a therapeutic situation anymore." "Actually, it's been very therapeutic for me," I said, standing up. "I've learned that my instincts about people aren't as reliable as I thought, but my ability to gather evidence and plan strategically is better than I gave myself credit for." I looked down at Alyssa, who was still staring at the photos of her meeting with Trent. "You were right about one thing. I am conflict avoidant and passive, but you made the mistake of assuming that would never change." I gathered up the evidence and put it back in the envelope. "My lawyer will be in touch about custody arrangements and asset division. I'm sure you understand the importance of having good legal representation, given how thoroughly you've researched the process." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Alyssa, you might want to be careful about trusting Trent too completely. Turns out he's been recording your conversations too. Something about insurance in case things go badly." I left her sitting there and walked out into the afternoon sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone was already ringing before I reached my car. Jennifer Walsh's name appeared on the screen. "How did it go?" she asked. "Better than expected. I think we can expect her to be more cooperative now that she knows her plan has been exposed." "Good. I've already received a call from Patricia Chen requesting a meeting to discuss settlement terms." That was fast. Word travels quickly in legal circles. Are you ready for this to get complicated? I thought about 15 years of marriage, 2 kids who would need explanation and reassurance, and the long process of rebuilding my life as a single father. "I'm ready." "Then let's finish what your wife started." I hung up and drove home to tell Jake and Ella that their parents were getting divorced. It would be the hardest conversation of my life, but at least it would be honest. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to telling the truth. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment, a 2-bedroom place 10 minutes from the kids' school, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that you were right about Trent. He ended things the day after our divorce was finalized, said he wasn't looking for anything serious." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "I'm sorry that happened to you." "Are you?" "Yes. Despite everything, I never wanted you to get hurt." "I know. I'm sorry too. For all of it." I set the phone aside without responding. Some conversations didn't need to continue. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Alyssa got her half of the assets, but no spousal support. The evidence of her premeditation and financial manipulation had convinced the judge that she didn't need ongoing support. We shared custody of Jake and Ella alternating weeks, and surprisingly, it was working well. The kids had handled the divorce better than I'd expected. Jake, now 16, had admitted he'd known something was wrong for months. Ella, 13 and wise beyond her years, had simply hugged me and said, "I'm glad you don't have to pretend to be happy anymore, Dad." I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a woman from work and dinner with someone I'd met through Jake's soccer team. It felt strange and wonderful to have conversations with people who were genuinely interested in getting to know me, not managing me or manipulating me toward some predetermined outcome. My phone rang. Dave's name appeared on the screen. "How's the bachelor life treating you?" he asked when I answered. "Better than expected, quieter but in a good way. Any regrets?" I thought about the question seriously. Did I regret the divorce, the pain it had caused the kids, the end of 15 years of shared history? "No," I said finally. "I regret how it ended, but not that it ended. I feel like myself again for the first time in years." "That's good to hear. You sound different." "Different how?" "Stronger, more confident, like you remember who you are." After we hung up, I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at the small garden I'd started behind the apartment building. Tomatoes, herbs, flowers, things that grew because I tended them, not because I was supposed to, or because someone expected me to. Tomorrow, Jake and Ella would come for their week with me. We'd make pancakes on Sunday morning, just the three of us, and maybe we'd start a new tradition, something that belonged to us, not to the ghosts of a marriage that had died long before any of us were ready to admit it. My tablet was on the counter, the same device where this whole story had begun. I'd kept it, though I'd changed all the passwords and deleted all the shared accounts. Sometimes I used it to read the news or check the weather, mundane tasks that felt revolutionary in their simplicity. No hidden profiles, no secret messages, no performance required. Just a man, a tablet, and the radical honesty of a life lived without deception. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything.